As Rosangela waits to apply for a job interview, she sees her competitor arriving and greets him with a good morning. Minutes later, another younger girl arrives and waits with them in line. After a few minutes, a pregnant blonde woman arrives and asks Rosangela if that was the line for the job interview and if she could stand in front of her as she had walked a lot. The brunette confirms and lets her stay, but the second candidate complains and tells the pregnant lady to go to the end of the line. Rosangela, who had given permission for her to be in the front, complains to the other participant. The pregnant woman looks at them and asks them if that vacancy that was available wasn't just for women. The young man looks at her and asks her if, in addition to being a buchita, she was also prejudiced, and says why he couldn't be a woman. The pregnant woman again says that she had walked a lot, that her feet were swollen, and that she really needed that job and had to do that interview. Rosangela, who was the first in line, says again that it was no problem for her that she could stand in front of him. Again, the young woman who was at the end of the line starts to complain, saying that there was no problem at all, and sends the pregnant woman back again. When the brunette talks about the pregnancy again, the young woman says she was pregnant, not sick, and she could go to the end of the queue. The pregnant woman says that everything was fine and that they didn't need to fight about it, but Rosangela goes to the end of the line and back to the front, talking to the young competitor who insisted that the pregnant woman stay in front of her, because the place was hers and would give it to whomever she wants. When she puts the pregnant woman in the place where she was, the other participants say that then she could go back. Angry at the disrespect they are doing, she says, "Stay in yours." The youngest participant complains again about the pregnant woman and starts to argue with the brunette in front who had given up her spot. The pregnant woman, not wanting to get into trouble, she says that there was no problem and that she would go to the back, but Rosangela says that she would not go to the end of the line, and the young woman was left with her complaints ignored. The pregnant woman apologizes again for the confusion caused, saying that she had no money to leave and that she had come on foot and that she did not even know if she would be able to return. Sympathizing with the situation of the pregnant woman, Rosangela says that there was no problem and that if it was for this the case, she would arrange the money for the pregnant woman to go home. Still not believing in the kindness of that woman, the young pregnant woman asked if she was serious. The pregnant blonde calling their attention to her, saying that she was feeling sick and feeling some pangs and that she would go look for a bathroom, and asks Rosangela if she could keep the place until she gets back, and that if someone called her she would ask if it was possible to wait a little. Hearing her confirmation, the blonde leaves in search of the bathroom. The third participant starts talking as soon as she leaves, saying she was right about what she had said, that the pregnant woman had barely started in the company and was already causing problems, and asks Rosangela why she is defending the pregnant woman. The brunette then defends the blonde, talking about her being pregnant and feeling sick and that she had only gone to the bathroom and what it cost to keep an eye on her vacancy. Rosangela answers them, saying that pregnancy was not a disease and that if she was there, it was because she could handle the job. And that the baby would be born soon, and soon she would be there with them here. The young man disregards what she said and informs them that he would be the favorite to win this vacancy, because he wouldn't have that belly to give the boss work and that he wouldn't be asking for medicine for his son. Behind him, the other participant was staring at him, and when he stops talking she says to both that I didn't know what they were discussing and that it was better for them to take the way back home, because she was the one who obviously had the profile for that vacancy in the company, because look at her who was all beautiful and tidy, and that they had nothing to do with the company. The man just looks at her and says that this time he would give her a break. The older brunette looks at them and says she is sad to see their arrogance and turns to face them, ignoring them. They look at her and the young man says about her trying to be Mother Teresa. A few minutes later, a company employee calls them in and waits for the interview, asking if it was just the three of them. When Rosangela would answer, the young woman cuts her off and confirms that it was just the three of them, passing in front of her with the other participant following the employee who came to call them. The brunette, not believing in the attitude of the girl, simply shakes her head and follows after them. When they arrived at the reception where they were guided, the employee asks them to sit down and wait for the interview, but Rosangela calls him to say that there were actually 4 participants because the other girl had been sick and she had to go to the bathroom. The clerk looks at her and says they would wait a little while. The clerk repeats it again for them to sit and wait, because he would call them on a first-come, first-served basis. The youngest participant soon says that she would be the first, because that vacancy was already hers, and starts to complain that it was hot there as she got up and spoke to the employee, running her hand through her hair, saying that his hair was beautiful, but the clerk simply confirms it's hot and treats her professionally by telling her to go sit down. Knowing that he wouldn't get anything, he changes tactics. He asked if it would take a long time, so she says if he didn't want to take a look at her resume, her hand on his shoulder, because his profile was wonderful for that company, but he tells her to rest assured that when it was her turn he would call her and guide her back to her place. When she sits down, the supposed pregnant woman enters the reception, and when the young woman sees her, she gets up and starts mocking her, asking, how could she have gone to the bathroom and already given birth to the child? Starting to laugh, saying that was just what was missing. The young candidate asks if she didn't understand the scheme and says that she wanted to punch her belly to get the spot and makes a face, and the young woman says that the blonde played the poor thing and nudges Rosangela, saying that she had fallen straight. But the older brunette just looks at her. The blonde passes by and catches the attention of the employee named Eduardo, saying good morning to him. Eduardo answers his boss and asks if everything was okay, getting up from his seat and giving her the chair. Then the young woman, who was disrespectful from the beginning, looks at the embarrassed blonde and asks if she was the boss, sits in shock. When she sees that they are looking at her, she greets them saying good morning and explains to them that their interview had started outside when she went to approach them to find out how they were going to receive her, but that she had actually stayed very disappointed, saying bye, because that vacancy was already hers as she pushed him to leave. But breaking her illusion of a guaranteed vacancy, the boss says, only him, dear. Letting Eduardo call their names and asking them to leave. Seeing that he had no more chance, Jiu, the only male participant, gets up and says that the company was not at his level, leaving with his resume, and soon after, Monica, the disrespectful young woman, takes his resume from the employee's hand and says that his profile works for that company, but it's the company that doesn't work for it and comes out right after the other. The boss sighs and says it's difficult, and calls Rosangela the woman who treated her with respect from the beginning and thanks her, saying that she had grown fond of her there in the queue and that the job was hers, and asks Eduardo to take care of her paperwork for hiring, and welcomes her and laughs when Rosangela talks about the fake belly and the baby, but the boss says she actually has one at home and says she can come visit, and they say goodbye.